Okay, so I'll move on to crime levels then. A fairly positive picture, as you will see from the trend in terms of crime levels across North Yorkshire. I think we would all agree, I know the Chief would, one crime is too many, and we want to reduce the amount of victims we have. So there's no target here. It's as low as we can take it, basically. That's clearly our key role. So that's the top line. That gives you the trend since 2021. So that really starts flattening out the COVID effect as well, because it was strange pre-COVID. If you look at the bottom box, that tells you, bottom right, that tells you where North Yorkshire is per 1,000 population in each crime type. Below, across the board, other than bicycle theft, we have seen some recent upticks in burglary and vehicle crime, which we'll come on to. But we've been very proactive in getting into those problems and targeting offenders, arresting and charging them where we can. And then on the left-hand side of that slide, you'll see quite a technical term, crime data integrity. So that we'd shorten that to CDI. Now, this is really important when the public are scrutinising us over how we're reporting crime, because this is about how accurately and effectively we translate an incident report into the appropriate crime record. That's really important. And what you'll see on there, for all crime, all reported crime, were 93.9%. That was reported by HMIC in their most recent appeal report. That's a very strong, good grading. And had we got to 94%, we would have been outstanding at crime recording. So that's what we're striving for. You'll see on there we're outstanding at reporting all violent offences at above 95%, and in terms of recording sexual offences above 96%. And we conduct regular audit and challenge to make sure that we maintain that ethical high performance in terms of crime recording, so people can have trust in what we're saying.
Just on the theft of cycles, I see we're very high there in NYP. What has been done to tackle this issue particularly?
Yes, it's very focused in the York area, university and different places. So we have had dedicated operations through neighbourhood policing, providing a lot of crime prevention advice as well. So making sure where we can, they're locked. So there's dedicated operations, particularly around the university in York City Centre in terms of bicycle theft. Some of it appears on second market, eBay, Gumtree and that kind of stuff, and we do work in the kind of second-hand market. Some of it, I think, is retained by the people who steal them. So, but it's very focused around York in the main.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Perhaps just add something just in terms of the overall crime rate. One of the things that I've been really keen on since the start of April is about improving our volume crime investigation performance, dealing with the number of outstanding suspects and progressing those crime investigations more efficiently and more effectively, and providing a better service to victims of crime. Just probably worth noting, in the last financial year, our overall outcome rate was 12.25% across the course of the year. So far this financial year, it's 16.8%, which is a really significant increase. But if you look at certain parts of the force, and most notably the Coastal Command, 21% of all crime has been resolved with a positive outcome. That's as good as anywhere in the country. And absolutely, our ambition is to deliver that level of consistency across the county. But it really is evidence of a significant improvement and uplift. And I just wanted to highlight that to your attention.
Thank you, Tim. Okay.
Okay, I'm happy to move on to the next slide. Yeah, I should just stress there that crime data integrity is they are independent ratings. We monitor it internally, but those being reported there are independent, are in the constabulary inspector's report. Okay, Dave, move on. Thank you. So what we see here is two slides on burglary, residential, and then robbery. So the top slide covers the trends around burglary residential. There's no doubt we've seen an uptick from February into March and into April. There's a high proportion of that offending is cross-border organised crime. So to the north of the county and to the south, Selby, had a particularly focused problem around burglary. I'm pleased to report we had a proactive operation called Operation Decrease, and as a result, currently 1 offender serving over 5 years in prison, and 11 burglaries were detected as a result. And there's another couple of offenders currently on remand that have been investigated, and we're doing that in partnership with West Yorkshire. So that shows you working in partnership, as you saw in the news yesterday, around county lines into the Skipton area from Keighley. We do work closely with our cross-border colleagues, and the same to the north with Cleveland in terms of offenders from over there. It's been a real focus of burglary residential, the amount of outstanding suspects we've got, to reduce that and to improve our burglary outcome rates, which currently are sat at around 10% since January, which is a vast improvement from the 4% that we had last year. So we're going to maintain the focus on our outcome rates for burglary. If I come to robbery, you can see there we had an uptick in February, but that's now under control in terms of our robbery performance. And then the next one, sorry, Nick, yeah, could you go to the next slide? Sorry, is there any questions on that, Mayor? Burglary and robbery?
No, that's fine, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the next one, which is violent crime and vehicle crime. Violent crime, obviously a key concern for the public. A significant proportion of reported violent crime isn't on the street, it's in private, sadly. It's domestic abuse related assault and crime, to give some context. But you will see again there a reduction in violent crime across the county. And then the next one is the vehicle crime element. We did see, it speaks for itself, an uptick in vehicle crime, very concerning actually, February into March. But again, we've targeted specific offenders. One to the south of the county has been charged with 15 offences. But by the nature of vehicle crime offending, it's quite difficult to get them to go to prison because of the nature of the offending and how the courts might view vehicle crime. So that particular offender wasn't sent into custody, but we put a problem-solving plan around that individual to make sure that their offending was disrupted, and we still continue to do that. So vehicle crime isn't necessarily an offence type unless it's something else where they're in custody, which obviously controls the problem. It's a slightly more problematic crime type, but it's just about understanding your offenders and disrupting them.
I think just on those 2 slides, it might be helpful to see the previous OPM performance. So how we compare it to this time as well. That might be quite good in future to have, if that would be possible.
Yeah, I think we could work on that.
Yeah, great, thank you. Next slide, please, if possible.
Yeah, so the Chief's already mentioned this, which is, you know, if we get a crime committed, we need to detect it on behalf of the victim and hold the offender to account. So crime investigative outcomes. What the top slide shows you is where we have something called the CROMU, which is the Crime Record Management Unit, which is a very technical term. But essentially what they do is they apply administrative outcomes to crimes. And until that administrative outcome is applied, and there's a complex framework for that that's derived by Home Office counting rules, until that outcome's applied, you can't show that crime as positively detected. So what that top graph shows you there is the amount of crime outcomes that were sat in a queue. So if you go back, there was over 17,000 at the beginning of last year. We've now reduced that to about 3,500 with an ambition through some productivity and efficiency work to reduce that further. Because that means we're claiming timely detections and positive outcomes for victims. And obviously, it reassures the public about how we're performing. The bottom graph shows you over the last 12 months what our crime outcomes have been. And very pleasingly, that is on an upward trajectory. And if I could just say 16% on average, we want to get each of the other 2 commands to where the coastal command are, like Chief Constable has said. If we were in that region of 20%, I think that would be some of the highest in the country. Mm-hmm. And it's important to highlight that the vast majority of those are not, for example, offences which are taken into consideration. These are what we would call primary detections. That's a charge or an out of court outcome appropriately. So These are primary detection. So if we wanted to move that beyond the 20%, which is a fifth of all crime, then we need to exploit the opportunities for example, taking into consideration offences. But the important bit is we need to get a really solid performance around our primary detection rate.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that one. That was great work on that. Well done.
The national average is about 11% currently.
Great
So,
stuff.
okay.
Next up, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So the next slide is one that focuses on stop and search. You'll appreciate a lot of public interest in stop and search, a very, very valuable tool for policing to use in the right circumstances where those grounds exist to search somebody for stolen property or items which they might be using to steal, break into a house or a car or weapons. So an incredibly powerful tool. I think the Chief and I are of the view we can do more.
Definitely.
Around proactive policing, because it's a really focused tool, but you have to provide the right intelligence and information to make sure we're legitimate in our use of stop and search. But I think we can use more if we reflect back on the burglary and vehicle crime problem, is to look at how we can increase our proactivity in that area. But what this slide talks to is basically the number of searches that are conducted by ethnicity. And what we do is compare that to the population makeup of the county, because what that might start describing is our disproportionate use of stop search. I don't believe we're disproportionate in our use of stop search. We have had certain areas previously where we've shown a higher proportion of stop searching people from ethnic minority communities. We've done an awful lot of work to understand that properly and to test our approach. What you'll see on the bottom graph, the bar chart, is by age. And I'm expecting a question, but I don't know if it'll come, about why do we search somebody under 10 years old? That did take place. That's not an error. It was in August of last year, and it was because we had a report the individual had a knife. So whether they're a child, that's more about their safety and others than it is about either an admin error or North Yorkshire Police are habitually searching children. And in 11 to 15, very similar, where the grounds exist, we have a lot of scrutiny around stop search independently. It goes to our strategic independent advisory group, and we also have a stop search scrutiny group that tests these. And the key with this is our officers accurately recording the grounds for why we stop search, and us testing those to make sure that they're proportionate.
Yeah, that was my one concern on this, was we do seem to be searching a lot of children, and how are we safeguarding such young children?
Yeah, we have an awful lot of training around it. Stop searches are conducted on body-worn video. So you'll have body-worn video as some level of independent assurance about what the officers are doing. We've heard the horror stories, haven't we, nationally, about officers searching young people. We have a very robust approach to this, and we do test the grounds, and we expect it to be on body-worn video. But there are times when we will need to do it because it's appropriate, and it in safeguarding young people, it might well be that we've got information that they might have something with them that could cause harm to them or others.
Thank you for that.
So I'll touch on obviously what serious and organised crime is, around some of those definitions. But obviously, primarily it's a threat that seriously impacts on local communities, and involves crossover between a number of crime types, which are clearly recorded within the slide. So I'm going to touch on those because you can see, and because of the nature and understandable nature of reporting regionally, locally and nationally around the threat of serious and organised crime, people online I'm sure will understand the crimes which sit within that. What I will say is that within North Yorkshire Police, our understanding of serious and organised crime is ensuring that crossover of crime types we're bringing together more fully. I think it's we've recognised that traditionally serious and organised crime are considered, particularly around drug supply. But as I've said, it very much currently involves the exploitation of the most vulnerable people in our communities, particularly around modern slavery, human trafficking, fraud and sexual exploitation, which I'll talk you through as we go through the slides. As I do so, I will explain some of the changes which have been made to our internal policing structures in recent weeks, and that's very much to improve our response to serious and organised crime. What I will say is the focus is very much going forward going to be on a strong neighbourhood policing delivery, And that's in line with Chief Constable Forbes' vision really around how we disrupt criminality with a strong neighbourhood presence. And in that way, we can, in my view, safeguard those who are most vulnerable to harm, whether that's through exploitation of themselves or for the personal gain of another. Is that, Dave?
Yeah.
So I'll take through that. Obviously, I'm not going to just everybody can read the slides, so I'm not going into too much detail on them. What I will do is I'll just explain the type of crime types and how they come about and what we're doing to tackle them. So CSE, I think, is predominant. It's probably more matured in terms of the media coverage that it gets around child sexual exploitation because of some of the national issues that we've encountered. But really fast moving and progressing is the criminal exploitation of children. And that is very much intrinsically linked around the county-line drug supply issue, which all forces given the country an experience in. That very much is linked to cuckooing, which I'll talk through the definition of as we move through the slides. What I will say is serious violence is on that. You wouldn't necessarily think that as a crime type in terms of bringing any sort of value to criminals in terms of commodity or product, but it is an ever-present in all strands of serious and organised crime. And that's very much for those involved within organised criminality to enforce their own authority and statute within the criminal fraternity. Those are the key crime types which we seek to tackle every single day in North Yorkshire Police. So this is just a flavour of shock disruptions. What's really key to say is that the disruption activity that's represented here with partners is likely to be much higher in reality because of the ineffective processes that we previously utilised in terms of how we record those disruptions. The introduction of that pattern system will give us a real enhanced and better understanding of where we're making a difference. I can go through some of the numbers, but again, this is very much just without going over the ground covered. This is very much around, when you look at the disruption type, those high numbers of warrants executed and searches, that is very much linked to the lead responsible officer at district levels and neighbourhood inspector driving that activity. You'll see there's 257 disruptions which are recorded throughout 23 and 24. The majority of those, as I say, coming back are minor. That is back to that neighbourhood policing having an effective grip and understanding of who your organised criminals are. Gun seized, thankfully, it says on there, I can't see that this is where it comes back to our maybe ineffective recording. It says gun seized, can't see any data within that, but what I will do is come to a case study which will explain where we have recovered firearms. You'll see 111 adults safeguarded, 23 children safeguarded, and that ATMIS activity records already start to pay dividends in terms of our understanding. Hopefully, the demonstration around the number of warrants executed at 132 and explicitly 52 years worth of sentences of serious organised criminals now being imprisoned, hopefully just paints the picture how seriously we take organised criminality and seek to tackle it. What I will come on to is our clear hold build sites at Barracliff and Clifton. Talk to you about them in terms of some of already the disruption activity we've seen in the clear phases of those. Unless there's any questions on any of the data that sits within the current disruption data.
It's just another one for me, and I'm sure it's quite obvious to everyone else. But what does 5 open APMIS? What does APMIS stand for? Sorry.
ATMIS. That's Agency and Police Management of Information System.
Make a note of that. Thank you.
I'm going to talk to you a little around fraud and our approaches around that. You can see in the slide our highest types of fraud are online shopping and auctions. And there's a significant focus, as I've talked about in previous slides, with the use of our FASOs and fraud ambassadors to prevent safeguard people through prevention and early intervention. That's just an understanding and a physical demonstration of the ages and range profiles involved. I'd rather go through the next slide in more detail if we can, which will give you an understanding of our approach.
That's fine, thank you. Yeah, great.
So again, we regionally recognise really in terms of our approach around prevention and intervention, as I've articulated, particularly through the use of our fraud ambassadors and our FASO approach. What I will go is just a little bit more detail over and above what's recorded to the slide. Again, in terms of success, so fraud protected where in the last month alone has led to over £50,000 worth of refunds from banks being made to victims who've been subject to fraud. Within the material that's provided there, Operation Signature is something that we really utilise in conjunction with our partners. It's a vulnerable victim notification system that's sent to the bank. It basically tells the bank that they've been a victim of crime to allow the bank to discharge a duty of care on their customer, protect them from future fraud and exploitation. We're heavily engaged in the banking protocol, and we see on a regular basis suspicious activity reports being shared with our fraud investigation team. And that's very much about banking staff within that protocol recognising when a customer is requesting a cash withdrawal off bank transaction that looks out of character or is particularly high, being able to make immediate contact with police with a set protocol in place to ask specific questions and launch potential victims. Officers are then allocated to respond to that call, and the PASO will review all of the bank protocols that are flagged to them for further additional engagement with banks. And I'll just talk to you finally about TrueCall, which again I think is a real prevention opportunity for us that we utilise heavily. So TrueCall is a call blocker that allows calls to come through to potential victims from friends and family, but blocks unwelcome calls. It asks callers to identify themselves before it puts them through. And we have a number of devices that we can fit and a number of systems that we fit to potential victims who are vulnerable to fraud. And we do that on a regular basis. That's kind of a recommended device and support that police officers will provide to our economic crime units, and we do that in high numbers, which is having a real effect in terms of the potential for vulnerable victims being targeted.
I have a hand up from Simon. Simon, let's come in.
Thank you, Mayor. So it's just a sort of quick question, really, not to slow us down a great deal, but just to recognise that we do pick up both locally from the work that we do engaging with the public and nationally, beyond York and North Yorkshire, that under-reporting of fraud is an issue, and lack of understanding amongst members of the public who are victims about who to report to plays into that question around reporting. So I just wonder, with your permission, Mayor, whether we could ask colleagues to share some thoughts about what might be done differently, or perhaps even a little better in terms of helping the public to understand how to report fraud and where to.
So North Yorkshire Police offers basically works in a different way to some, well, majority of national forces. So the majority of national forces utilise the action fraud system, which will make an assessment around the fraud. No particular investigative strategy set around that. There's an opportunity for recovery of the loss. Limited. North Yorkshire Police will screen every call that comes through in terms of fraud and make an assessment through an identified single point of contact of that fraud to ensure that if it is going to action fraud, it's appropriate. In the majority of cases, it's taken by North Yorkshire Police as an investigative opportunity. That's where we're seeing our performance within the area of fraud in terms of investigative strategies that we've done, really enhanced over and above what other forces are doing currently. We act somewhere out of national guidance around the action fraud. So whilst the action fraud line is available of communication to victims of fraud or potential victims of fraud, we still, by virtue of the way that we do things, encourage people to contact the police and plead it's an emergency.
Wayne, thank you. Just to come back in on that, I mean, obviously it's entirely a matter for the Mayor, but we've always worked closely together on areas of public concern. So anything that we can do together going forward with the Mayor's support to raise public awareness around the approach taken in North Yorkshire, I think can only be good for the public. So I hope that's all right, David. I just thought that was a helpful point to highlight.
Excellent, thanks, Simon. Obviously, first one, Tim from Harrogate, illegal vehicle, so we can all see this. Is a police officer allowed to knowingly and complicitly allow a vehicle to be driven on UK roads without any tax, MOT or insurance?
Well, clearly driving a vehicle on the road in the UK without tax, MOT or insurance, or all three, is illegal. However, my understanding is that this particular question relates to an ongoing investigation, so I won't be commenting on it any further in the public forum.
Thank you. Next one, please. Mr. Robinson Thirsk, London protest incident. Sorry, what is your opinion on the police action versions? Jewish man accused of being openly Jewish on the streets of the UK. What action should be taken against the police? I'm not calling it officers because they're not commissioned officers concerned.
Okay. Well, this has obviously been well publicised in the news and relates to an incident within the Metropolitan Police area. I'm only furnished with the facts as I've read them in the media, the same as everyone else. So I would never comment on an incident that took place in another police area. That's a matter for the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, and I understand that he's spoken nationally in the media about this issue on a number of occasions. But what I would say more broadly about protests, particularly related to the conflict in the Middle East at the moment, we recognise that there's tensions across communities in this regard, and we have undertaken a community intelligence assessment. We've liaised with communities throughout North Yorkshire. It's really important that we understand those sense of tensions and that we work with communities through visible policing and engaging in those communities to make sure that people feel safe. As regards the policing of protest, we're very experienced at policing protest, and we always take a human rights approach, and it's always about balancing the rights of those who wish to protest. We live in a democracy, and the right to protest is very, very important. And as a public organisation, we've got a positive duty to make sure that we facilitate peaceful protest. That has to be balanced against the rights of those affected by that protest. It's a balancing act. We have some very experienced commanders who undertake a very, very structured approach to this, and we'll continue to do that as we move across the coming months.
Thank you. Next question, please. David from Harrogate, A1 road traffic incident 24th of April 2024. Why was the traffic situation in the A1 today handled so badly? Presumably there will be an investigation into why several hours after the accident, traffic signs of the A19 to A1 link road were indicating 40-mile-per-hour speed approaching the A1 when it was actually totally at a standstill.
Well, this obviously relates to a really tragic incident where a young man lost his life, a lorry driver, and a family had been left without a husband and a father. And my sympathies absolutely lie with that family. It's a tragic situation. It's right that it did cause significant disruption on the A1. I know that because it disrupted my journey to work and from work throughout the course of the day. It was an incredibly serious incident that involved a lorry hitting the parapet of a bridge. It took a very long time to deal with. Whilst my primary sympathies are with the family of the young man who died, I am also conscious of the impact that had on the emergency workers and my officers who had the very difficult job of removing that lorry and removing a body from the carriageway. These are incredibly difficult events to deal with. We also have to have a very thorough investigation. We owe that to the family of that deceased man, and it did take a long time to deal with. But I think most people would agree that we've got to do that job properly, empathetically, in a way that makes sure that the family are informed exactly what happened on that occasion. So that's probably what I'd say on that matter.
Thank you very much, Tim. Next question, please. Gwen, accounts and transparency. When and in what way will the accounts inspection process take place? What transparency and public access arrangements will there be for audit committees?
Okay, so we're working towards the legislative date to complete the draft statement of accounts, and they'll be published on our website. And the day after the accounts are published, notice will be given for a 6-week period between 9 AM and 4:30 PM that anyone who is interested may inspect the accounts and make copies of the accounts of the Chief Constable for the period ended 6th of May 2024 and any of the supporting documents. It should be noted that because of the transition to the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority, there's an extended end of the financial year from the 7th of May 2024. And those accounts will be available for inspection at the offices where they're normally kept, and that's police headquarters at Alberton Court in Northallerton.
Thank you. Simon, would you like to come in on that there as well?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, and the Chief's absolutely right. I just wanted to add to the answer, really. The extension of the financial year that took place in the York and North Yorkshire transfer order is actually a shorter extension than has been the case in other transfers of PCC functions. So it is going to be a significant challenge to meet the revised deadlines, and I'm sure you won't mind, Mayor, or for that matter, Chief Constable, if I just pay a tribute in advance to colleagues who are working very hard to meet what is an extremely challenging deadline anyway, that is essentially a month earlier than would have been the case if the deadline had been shifted in the way that it was in other areas.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. But I think the fundamental point is, at a point in the future, our accounts will be published and will be transparent and available to the public to inspect.
Thank you very much for that update. Thank you both. Next question, please. Gwen, Accounts and Transparency. How can it be acceptable for an update on the GRIM and improving HMICFRS inspection to particularly and to us to have 0 facts and verbal report only? I hope now this is all in local government remit, we can get evidence, not verbal assurances. Welcome to the new Mayor and CC. With these two forces coming within local government remit, now may I ask if, when a review of the democratic governance and transparency will be undertaken to bring these services more into line with local government standards, including audit? As an initial proposal, may I ask for a forward plan, all reports written as expected in good local government, I believe, include background papers, never verbal, e.g. how can you be scrutinised on your HMICFRS action plan when it isn't presented?
Okay, well, I think where do I start? Firstly, I think as the Deputy's made clear, in terms of the most recent HMIC report, when you compare the latest inspection criteria that's been applied through the latest round of inspections, North Yorkshire Police compares very favourably with other forces that have been inspected. That is due to a huge amount of hard work by the officers, staff and volunteers of North Yorkshire Police. And that said, we recognise that there is more work to do. And I've been very, very clear with the force. Being a good force is the minimum expectation the public have. And my ambition as the Chief Constable is for us to be outstanding. We've explained here that we've got very, very clear governance around that. And aside from the conversations that we have here in the public forum, you will know, and certainly your colleagues from the office will know, that this is discussed in a number of forums where I, as the Chief Constable, am held to account in terms of our delivery of HMIC areas for improvement. Just as regards to the second point, absolutely now, the functions of the former Police Crime Commissioner are consumed within the Combined Authority, and it's now for yourself, Mayor, to hold me to account for delivery of an efficient police service. But in terms of North Yorkshire Police, we're not within a local government remit, and we never have been. It's a corporation sole, and as Chief Constable, I have unfettered operational independence to make those decisions about how and where we deploy resources and what we investigate across the force. And that's always been the case, and we'll continue in that. That said, we want to be as transparent as possible. We want to make sure that we provide you with the proper information for you to be able to hold us to account. And I hope that the detailed presentations you've had today about broader force performance and specifically the area of serious and organised crime give you some confidence that we intend to discharge that responsibility properly and transparently. So I think that's probably all I've got to say about HMIC. We take it very, very seriously. One of the reasons I was appointed to be the Chief Constable of this force is just the track record I've brought in terms of improving the record with HMIC of other forces that I've worked in. But it's not the only measure of police effectiveness. And for me, an outstanding force is not just a grading by HMIC. It's about the measure of confidence that the public have in us, and also that yourself as Mayor have confidence in us, and that the people, the very, very brilliant officers, staff and volunteers that work with North Yorkshire Police have confidence in us as a leadership team.
Thank you, Tim. Did you just want to come in on that, Simon?
Yes, and I'll be really as brief
you.
as I can. So I agree with everything that the Chief Constable's just said. In relation to audit committees, this particular questioner takes a very close interest in audit committee business, and we really welcome that. Just to set out what the position is really briefly, in relation to policing and crime, there is a joint independent audit committee that assists yourself, Mayor, in your PCC functions, and also assists the Chief Constable in terms of bringing independent scrutiny and support to bear in relation to all aspects of financial corporate governance, and that includes the external inspections undertaken by auditors and, of course, by HMI. That independent audit committee has transferred intact into the new arrangements. But just to answer the questions on the screen and the previous one in relation to audit committee business, as this questioner will know, but the public may not, the committee did review its approach to accessibility and transparency, and is satisfied that that is the appropriate way forward. And what that means is that if anybody would like to attend an audit committee, arrangements can be made on request, either to join that electronically or, for that matter, in person if it's being held in person. I do know that in future there is an intention for the combined authority to review the audit committee structures so that we achieve some alignment, but that work is very much in its infancy, and anything that is done will comply with the financial management codes of practice that we have to comply with in terms of PCC business, and also in relation to Fire and Rescue Authority business as well. I hope that helps, Mayor.
Thanks, Simon. Thank you for that. Next question, please. Thank you. Gwen, leadership. Hi, NY Scrutiny. Can you clear up recent NYP York leadership changes besides CC recruitment? Has former DCC subject of IOPC investigation been retired off as per media reports? 2, the former temp promoted CC Foskett now gone. 3, a permanent appointment been made to DCC. Do you think, as respect to citizens and ratepayers, that NYP York, myself or Jay Coles should always make a press release to indicate ACC and above changes rather than us, and maybe police officers finding out by chance?
Mayor, if I may, as your Deputy Monitoring Officer for Functions, I'll just introduce the answer to this question, if that's all right.
Sure.
Because as this particular questioner will know, these are issues that have been raised in correspondence directly with the OPFCC, and I can assure you and the public that, and the questioner, that the OPFCC will answer that correspondence. In terms of one of the points made, of course, Mayor, yourself and the Chief have welcomed the permanent DCC to his role, including at the beginning of this morning's session. And more broadly, I'm sure you would expect me to say that you have a strong commitment, Mayor, to matters of significant public interest being announced transparently, and I'm sure the Chief Constable would repeat a similar commitment. Whilst we're grateful for the questioner's interest in this topic, I think it's probably just appropriate to hand over to the Chief and his team because I know they want to add slightly to what I've said in terms of the specific announcements that are owned by the force around leadership. And perhaps I could, with your permission, Mayor, hand over to Chief Constable Forber or DCC Bissett just to reiterate some of those existing public announcements.
Yes, please.
Scott, you deal with.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thanks, Chief. Yeah, thank you, Simon. Yeah, so just a simple matter of fact, really. Both officers that are mentioned there were eligible to retire and have made the personal decisions to do so. It's as simple as that. That's what they've done, and I think the Chief might have a comment on the Assistant Chief Constable process.
So absolutely right that I made the permanent appointment to DCC. The selection process took place the week before I actually started as Chief and was announced on the very first day that I was the Chief Constable. And just for the sake of clarity, I currently have an advert out for Assistant Chief Constables. I am very pleased with the pool of candidates that have expressed an interest, and I'm very confident that we will build an outstanding executive team here at North Yorkshire Police. The selection process will be taking place in early June, a very robust selection process to make sure that I get the top team that I need to deliver an outstanding police service to the communities of York and North Yorkshire. And I will be making an announcement in early June about who those individuals are.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for that. Next question, please. Thank you. Mac Harrogate pavement parking. So many cars park on the pavement and prevent a safe walkway for pedestrians. I understand this is contrary to the highway code and probably against the law. Often there is little room that wheelchair users and mothers with prams have to brave using the roads. In years gone by, we had PCSO who might have challenged these inconsiderate behaviour. Sadly, we never see him now.
Okay, so absolutely parking on the pavements is inconsiderate, and certainly if we do see someone parking on the pavement, I would clearly expect officers and PCSOs to ask them not to do so. It's important to say this is not just a police responsibility, and certainly local authorities have responsibility in terms of parking restrictions across the county. And often as well, this is part of neighbourhood, because if there are parking issues and persistent parking issues, sometimes it needs a bit of problem solving. This is the essence of neighbourhood policing, but it is about working with partners, of which the local authorities are a key contributor to that. In terms of PCSO visibility, we've already touched on that as part of the performance presentation today. I am determined that we will build outstanding neighbourhood policing. Some of that is about really understanding the demands and what the public expect of neighbourhood policing. We're going to be undertaking an exercise over the coming months to build on that and to decide the proper balance between police officers and PCSOs between neighbourhoods. But my expectation is that they will be visible in their communities, and we'll be developing a performance management framework that underpins that.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thanks for the answer. Next question, please. We've some more. Carl Ingleton, police coverage. It was reported to Ingleton Parish Council, that the response times experienced in North Yorkshire did not compare favourably with neighbouring authorities. These facts, coupled with what appears to be an upsurge in criminal activity in our locality, is causing serious concerns amongst the community that we represent. At our April meeting, we were informed by our local police representatives that the Chief Constable regarding manning levels in the rural areas as a priority for action.
Yeah, so I think to deal with the final point there, I do regard policing the rural community as a priority, and absolutely I recognise that particularly in our most rural communities, the sense of isolation can contribute to vulnerability. We have to police with that in mind, and one of the things the Deputy talked about during his presentation earlier was about the expansion of the public safety service with North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue and Yorkshire Ambulance Service to provide a preventative service in those most rural areas that absolutely meets the needs of the community. It is fair to say that in the past we have seen response times in our most rural areas lag behind what we'd expect. And if I take you back to the graph within that initial performance presentation, we did discuss about how the improvement we've seen in rural response times over the past 12 months, and certainly our most recent figures for Craven. I'm looking at our most recent performance figures for the financial year to date. So in terms of immediate rural compliance, about 84.06%. In Craven, we reach within 15 minutes. That's compared to 84.92% across the broader force. That said, you know, I want to listen to communities. I think my understanding is, and I'll just perhaps turn to the deputy, that we've now got a forward holding point out towards Craven, which has led to a drastic improvement in response times. We don't have many immediate response calls out in that area, but it is important that we police with that in mind, and we'll continue to develop our response capability to make it as effective as possible. One of the things that will improve our response capability is the provision of a proper mobile technical solution for our officers. We don't have that in North Yorkshire. This is the first force that I've worked in within the last 10, 12 years that doesn't have a mobile solution, which means that our officers are more tied to a police station than they need to be. That's absolutely something that we're on with procuring at the moment, and absolutely a business case for investment that we'll be bringing forward to yourself at some point in the coming months.
Can I just make a comment? Sorry, mate. Just make a brief
Yes, please. Yeah, please do. Please do.
The notable in Ingleton on the 27th of March, which was where a group of organised criminals dragged a cash machine out of the co-op. Very unusual, middle of the night. You can absolutely understand the impact that has locally. I mean, I'm not reporting anything isn't in the media, but a number of offenders were arrested, including one Kenny York from the Morecambe area, who received 3 years on the 10th of May for that offence. We worked very closely with Lancashire Police, some excellent investigative detective work to take out a team that clearly are targeting the more isolated rural areas for financial gain. So to turn that round in a matter of weeks, I think is commendable. We don't want it happening in the first place, but it's just an example of where we do get that type of offending. We will focus on it, and that individual is where he needs to be, which is in prison.
And I'll just finish off with, just to reassure the community that I am intending to visit that part of the county very soon, so I can really see the policing challenges firsthand myself.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the answers there. Next. Is that all the questions we've done there? Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I believe the next online public meeting is on the 20th of June at 2 p.m. for North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. And please see the website for further details on that. Thank you very much.